The plasma storm raged outside the royal chamber, casting eerie violet shadows across the scaled walls. Queen Vestraza of the Draconian Empire clicked her talons against the obsidian throne, each tap echoing through the cavernous room. Her massive form, covered in iridescent black scales that shimmered with hints of emerald and sapphire, tensed as the delegation of Zolarians approached. "Your Majesty," hissed the lead Zolarian, his translucent skin revealing the complex network of veins pulsing beneath. "We bring tribute from our recent conquest." Vestraza's amber eyes narrowed. The Zolarians were known scavengers of war, parasites who followed in the wake of greater powers and picked the bones of fallen civilizations clean. They had no honor, but occasionally they brought interesting trinkets. "Proceed," she commanded, her voice rumbling like distant thunder. The Zolarians parted, revealing a small hovering container. With a gesture from their leader, the container's opaque shield dissolved, exposing its contents. Inside lay a tiny creature, pink and fragile-looking, with a tuft of dark hair on its otherwise smooth head. It was swaddled in strange fabric bearing unfamiliar symbols. "A human infant," explained the Zolarian. "The sole survivor of our raid on an outpost in the Terran sector. Their species is primitive but resilient. They are considered a curiosity in some quarters." Vestraza leaned forward, her massive head now just meters from the tiny being. The infant, awakened by the movement, opened its eyes, startlingly blue against its pink skin, and gazed directly at the Dragon Queen without fear. Then it did something remarkable. It smiled. In 300 cycles, Vestraza had conquered 12 star systems, defeated 3 attempted coups, and survived an assassination attempt by her own clutchmate. She had never, in all that time, been smiled at with such pure, fearless joy. "The creature appears defective," continued the Zolarian, misinterpreting her silence. "It shows no appropriate fear response. Perhaps its neural pathways are undeveloped. Still, as a biological specimen—" "Silence," Vestraza said, not loudly, but with such authority that the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "You bring me a child, a survivor, as if it were a trinket?" The Zolarians shifted uncomfortably. You thought I would be amused by the suffering of an infant." Her talons dug into the armrests of her throne, leaving deep gouges in the stone. "That I would find entertainment in an orphan child?" "Your Majesty," the Zolarian stammered. "The humans are barely sentient." The infant chose that moment to make a sound, a happy gurgle, reaching tiny hands toward the massive Dragon Queen without a trace of fear. Something long dormant stirred in Vestraza's ancient heart. She had never produced offspring of her own. The genetic modifications that had given her extended life and enhanced abilities had rendered her sterile, a fact known only to her most trusted advisors. It was the price of power, one she had paid willingly, but in quiet moments, she sometimes wondered what might have been. "Leave the child," she commanded, "and get out of my sight." "But Your Majesty," protested the Zolarian leader, "this specimen could be valuable if—" Vestraza rose to her full height, towering over the delegation, her wings partially extending in the universal draconian signal of impending violence. "I said leave it." The Zolarians backed away hastily, bowing repeatedly. "As you wish, Empress. We meant no offense. The human is yours." When they had gone, Vestraza approached the hovering container cautiously. The infant watched her with curious eyes, tracking her movements. When she extended one massive clawed finger toward it, the baby reached out and wrapped its tiny hand around the tip of her talon. For the first time in decades, Vestraza felt something like tenderness. "Commander Cross," she called, and her chief of security appeared instantly from the shadows where he had been standing guard. "Yes, Your Majesty? Find me someone who knows about human infants. Quickly." Within hours, the royal palace was in an uproar. The medical staff, accustomed to treating draconian physiology, scrambled to research human biological needs. The royal quartermasters tore apart the archives searching for information on human dietary requirements. And deep in her private chambers, the most feared ruler in 3 quadrants of the galaxy awkwardly cradled a human infant against her armored chest, watching in fascination as it slept. "Humans are remarkably adaptable," explained Dr. Mira, the xenobiologist Kraz had located. She was a centaurian, a species known for their comprehensive approach to galactic biology. Their homeworld features extreme environmental variations, which has made them quite resilient. This child can acclimate to our atmosphere and gravity with minimal adjustments. And its needs? Vestraze asked. Frequent nutrition, physical contact, stimulation for neural development, Mira listed. Their maturation process is slow by galactic standards. Full physical development takes nearly 2 decades. Vestraze's brow ridges rose in surprise. So long. Yes, but their cognitive development is fascinating. They learn constantly, adapting and absorbing information at remarkable rates. Their pattern recognition abilities are exceptional. The queen looked down at the sleeping infant. Can it understand that its birth species is gone? Dr. Mira hesitated. At this stage, no. Human infants form attachments to caregivers regardless of species. He, according to my scans, will bond with whoever provides care and security. Vestraze was silent for a long moment. What is the symbol on his wrapping? Mira examined the fabric. It appears to be Terran script. It likely indicates his designation, his name. And that would be? The characters read Alexander. Alexander, Vestraze repeated, the unfamiliar name strange on her tongue. It shall be Xander in our language. Prince Xander of House Vestraze. Myra's expression revealed her shock. Your Majesty, you intend to raise this human as your heir? I intend to raise him as my son, Vestraze corrected. The matter of succession will be addressed when appropriate. News of the Dragon Queen's adoption spread through the Empire like wildfire. Many of her advisors counseled against it. A human could never rule Draconians, they argued. The populace would reject him. Their enemies would see it as weakness. Vestraze silenced them all with a simple declaration. He is under my protection. Any harm to him is harm to me. Any insult to him is insult to the throne. And so began the unprecedented upbringing of a human child in the royal house of the galaxy's most feared reptilian species. By age 5, Xander had adapted remarkably well to life among the Draconians. His quarters were adjusted for human comfort, warmer than Draconian preference, with furnishings suited to his smaller size. But he spent most of his time following Vestraze everywhere, a tiny pink figure trailing behind the imposing Dragon Queen. Mother, he called one day, running into the war room where Vestraze was conferring with her generals. The military leaders fell silent, still unaccustomed to the human child's casual interruptions. Xander, Vestraze acknowledged, her tone stern but her eyes softening at the sight of him. We are discussing important matters. I know, he said earnestly. The Arcturus Rebellion. I've been studying it. The colonists are angry because the neutron mining is making their planet unstable. The generals exchanged glances. The boy was correct, though this detail hadn't been made public. And what would you suggest? Vestraze asked, ignoring the looks of discomfort from her advisors. Xander scrunched his face in thought. Why not let them keep more of the neutrons? Then they'd be richer and wouldn't mind the mining so much. A simplistic solution, but not entirely without merit. Vestraze nodded thoughtfully. An interesting perspective. We will consider it. Later, after implementing a version of Xander's suggestion that successfully quelled the rebellion, Vestraze took him to the Royal Observatory. Against the backdrop of swirling galaxies, she explained the complexities of ruling an empire spanning hundreds of worlds. To rule is to protect, she told him. Our people look to us for safety, for order, for justice. Like how you protect me? Xander asked. In a way, she replied, but on a much larger scale. When I grow up, I'll help you protect everyone, he declared with the absolute confidence of childhood. Vestraze felt an unfamiliar tightness in her chest. I believe you will, she said softly. As Xander grew, so did the challenges of raising a human in a draconian world. His physical strength, while impressive for a human, was far below draconian norms. He could not breathe fire, had no scales for protection, and lacked wings for ceremonial flights. But where he lacked in physical draconian traits, he compensated with uniquely human abilities. His mind worked differently, making connections and intuitive leaps that sometimes baffled his draconian tutors. He could navigate social situations with a flexibility the more rigid draconians found both unsettling and valuable. And his smaller size allowed him access to places most draconians couldn't go. When he was 10, the assassination attempts began. The first came during a diplomatic reception. A servant carrying a tray of refreshments approached Xander, but Vestraza's heightened senses detected the faint smell of a toxin deadly to humans. The servant died screaming, the queen's talons around his throat. Why? Xander asked afterward, shaken but calm. Why would someone want to kill me? Vestraza considered shielding him from the truth, but decided against it. He would need to understand the dangers of his position. Because you represent change, she explained. And some fear change above all else. The second attempt came from his combat instructor, who accidentally set a training drone to lethal settings. Xander's quick reflexes saved him, and the instructor's execution was public and prolonged. After the third attempt, a bomb in his private study, Vestraza assigned Commander Kraz as Xander's permanent bodyguard. The grim, battle-scarred Draconian seemed an unlikely companion for the human boy, but they formed an unexpected bond. Kraz taught Xander to fight not as a Draconian, but as a human, using his smaller size, greater agility, and different center of gravity to his advantage. He taught him to use Draconian weapons modified for human strength. Most importantly, he taught him to think like an assassin, to see the weaknesses in any security arrangement. Your difference is not weakness, Kraz told him during a particularly frustrating training session, when Xander had failed repeatedly to master a Draconian fighting technique. It is merely difference. The water does not fight the same way as the fire, yet both can destroy. By his 13th year, Xander had grown into a lanky adolescent with a shock of dark hair and the confident bearing of Draconian royalty. He attended council meetings with Vestraza, offering perspectives that often challenged centuries of Draconian tradition. Some council members had come to value his input. Others still regarded him as the queen's inexplicable pet project. But all acknowledged that the human prince possessed a sharp mind and, more surprisingly, a deep understanding of Draconian honor. The mining colony on Rigel 7 has failed to meet its quotas for the third consecutive cycle, reported Minister Vox, an elderly Draconian whose scales had faded to pale gray with age. The punishment for such failure is clear, said General Zorn, his massive fist striking the table. We should make an example of them. Xander, sitting at Vestraza's right hand, spoke up. The colony was established 70 cycles ago, correct? Minister Vox nodded. And the mining equipment has not been upgraded since then. There has been no need, Vox replied stiffly. Draconian technology is superior. Even superior technology requires maintenance, Xander pointed out. Perhaps before we punish them, we should inspect their equipment. If they lack the tools to meet their quotas, punishment would be. He searched for the right word, dishonorable. A murmur ran through the council. To invoke honor was to touch the core of Draconian values. Vestraza watched with carefully concealed pride as her son navigated the dangerous waters of imperial politics. He was learning. That night, as they dined privately in the royal chambers, Xander eating his specially prepared human food, while Vestraza consumed a barely cooked haunch of meat, she broached a subject she had been considering for some time. You should learn about your birth species, she said. Xander looked up in surprise. Why? I am Draconian. You are my son and a prince of the Empire, Vestraza agreed. But your biology is human. Your mind works in human ways, even though your values are ours. Understanding humans may give you insights that could benefit the Empire. In truth, she had another reason. Reports indicated that the Terran Alliance was recovering from the devastation of the wars that had left Xander orphaned. Humans were beginning to establish themselves as a minor but notable presence in galactic affairs. Sooner or later, Xander would encounter others of his kind. Do you wish me to study them as potential enemies? Xander asked, his expression troubled. I wish you to study them as you would any species, Vestraza replied carefully, with attention to their strengths, their weaknesses, their values, and their potential. So began Xander's education in humanity. He devoured historical records, cultural artifacts, linguistic analyses, anything the Imperial archives contained about humans. He was particularly fascinated by their art and music, concepts that had no direct Draconian equivalent. As he immersed himself in human culture, subtle changes emerged in his behavior. He became more expressive, gesturing with his hands when he spoke. He developed a sense of humor that sometimes baffled his Draconian companions. And occasionally, Vestraza would find him staring at the stars with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. "Do you wonder about them?" she asked him once, during such a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I remember that you are my mother, and this is my home." His 15th year brought a new crisis to the Empire. The Hive Collective, a massive insectoid species from the Galactic Rim, launched a surprise attack on 3 draconian outposts simultaneously. Their technology was unlike anything the Empire had encountered. Organic ships that regenerated damage, weapons that targeted neural pathways specific to draconian physiology. For the first time in generations, the Draconian Empire faced an existential threat. The Council of War convened in the ancient Chamber of Flames, where massive braziers burned with the sacred fire carried from the Draconian homeworld. Generals and admirals reported devastating losses, their usual confidence shaken. "Their ships anticipate our tactical patterns," General Zorn reported grimly. "It's as if they know our military doctrine intimately. And their bioweapons," added Admiral NYXX. "They specifically target our neurological systems. Our warriors die in agony, while other species remain unaffected." Vestraza listened silently, her expression unreadable. Beside her, Xander's mind raced, connecting pieces of information, forming a theory. "May I speak, Mother?" he asked. She nodded. Xander stood, facing the assembled war leaders. Some still regarded him with skepticism, but many had come to respect his analytical mind. "I believe the Hive is using our greatest strength against us," he said. "Draconian military doctrine has remained consistent for centuries. It's predictable because it's proven effective against all previous enemies. But the Hive studies patterns. It's how their collective intelligence works." He activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber, showing the recent battle formations. "See here and here? They anticipated your maneuvers because you followed standard doctrine. And the bioweapons, they're not targeting Draconians specifically. They're targeting reptilian neurological patterns, which happen to be similar across several species." "What are you suggesting, Prince Xander?" asked Admiral NYXX. "Unpredictability," Xander replied. "Random variations in our attack patterns." And he hesitated, then continued, "I believe I may be immune to their neural weapons. As a human, my nervous system is fundamentally different." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. "You propose to enter combat?" General Zorn asked incredulously. "I propose to lead a special operations team," Xander corrected. "A small unit that can infiltrate their command hive while the main fleet engages their forces with unpredictable tactics." Vestraza's talons dug into the armrests of her throne, but her voice remained steady. "The prince's strategy has merit. General Zorn, Admiral NYXX, implement the tactical variations. Commander Kraz will assemble the special operations team." She turned to Xander. "We will discuss your role privately." Later, in her chambers, her composure finally broke. "It is too dangerous," she said, her massive tail lashing with agitation. "You are not expendable, Xander." "No soldier should be considered expendable," he replied quietly. "But I'm uniquely qualified for this mission. The Hive can't predict human behavior as easily as Draconian. Their weapons won't affect me, and I've been trained by the best warriors in the Empire." "You are my son," Vestraza said, a hint of fire escaping her jaws with her words. "My only child. I am also a prince of the Empire," Xander reminded her. "You taught me that to rule is to protect. Let me protect our people." Vestraza looked at him. This human she had raised. This child of another species who had somehow become the center of her world. He stood before her not as the infant she had saved, but as a young man prepared to risk everything for the empire that had become his home. "Very well," she said finally. "But you will take Commander Kraz and his best warriors. And you will return, Xander. That is a direct order from your queen." He bowed, Draconian style, wings he didn't possess mimicked in the movement of his arms. "Yes, mother." The infiltration vessel was unlike any ship in the Draconian fleet. Small, organic-looking, and designed to mimic the outer shell of Hive transport pods. It carried Prince Xander and a team of 5 elite warriors toward the massive Hive command structure orbiting the conquered moon of Draconis IV. "Final preparations," Commander Kraz growled, his scarred face illuminated by the ship's dim red lighting. "Weapons check." Xander adjusted the custom-built armor that accommodated his human physiology while providing protection comparable to Draconian battle scales. He checked his modified pulse rifle, and the neural disruptor specifically calibrated for hive neurological patterns. Remember, Cross told the team, our priority is to reach the central node and deploy the virus. The prince is immune to their neural weapons, so he takes point when we encounter heavy resistance. Xander nodded, grateful for Cross' matter-of-fact tone. The commander had never treated him differently because of his species, had never doubted his capabilities or his place in the Empire. Approaching insertion point, announced the pilot. Prepare for silent drop. As they descended toward the massive hive structure, Xander felt a strange calm settle over him. All his life, he had trained for this, to protect the Empire, to prove his worth not as a human, but as a draconian prince. Mother, he sub-vocalized into his secure comm unit, knowing Vestraza would be monitoring from the Imperial flagship. We're going in. There was a pause, then her reply came, formal and controlled. May your fires burn bright, my son. The traditional draconian blessing before battle. Xander couldn't breathe fire, but the sentiment warmed him nonetheless. Their ship attached to the outer hull of the hive structure, magnetic clamps engaging silently. The boarding tube extended, molecular cutters slicing through the organic material of the hive ship. Within minutes, they were inside. The interior was nightmarish, pulsing, organic corridors that seemed alive, secreting bioluminescent fluid that cast an eerie green glow. The air was thick with spores that would have paralyzed draconian nervous systems, but thanks to Xander's human biology, he remained unaffected. Masks functioning properly, reported Kraz as the team moved forward, their specialized equipment filtering the toxic atmosphere. They encountered the first hive warriors at an intersection of 3 corridors. The insectoid creatures were nearly 3 meters tall, with razor-sharp mandibles and multiple limbs ending in what looked like organic weapons. Xander didn't hesitate. He fired his pulse rifle, the modified charge disrupting the hive warriors' central nervous systems. The creatures collapsed, their chitinous exoskeletons clattering against the organic floor. Quickly, he ordered. Their hive mind will register the loss. The team moved deeper into the structure, fighting through increasingly determined resistance. Twice they nearly lost warriors to ambushes, saved only by Xander's uncanny ability to anticipate the hive's tactics, a human unpredictability that the collective intelligence couldn't fully counter. Finally, they reached the central chamber, a vast, pulsating space dominated by a massive neural node that glowed with unnatural energy. Here, the collected consciousness of the hive collective interfaced with their biological technology. Deploy the virus, Xander ordered, taking up a defensive position as Specialist Thex, their tech expert, approached the node with the specially designed viral package. Suddenly, the chamber shuddered. From recesses in the walls emerged a creature unlike the warriors they had faced, larger, more developed, with an enlarged cranial structure that pulsed with the same energy as the central node. Hive Queen, Cross snarled, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, the creature emitted a wave of neural energy that dropped all the Draconians to their knees, their nervous systems overloaded with pain. All except Xander. The human prince stood alone, facing the Hive Queen as his team writhed in agony behind him. Interesting, came a voice directly in his mind. The Queen, communicating telepathically. A human among Draconians. An anomaly. Xander raised his weapon. Release my team. You are not like them. The Queen continued, ignoring his demand. You are adaptive, flexible, like us. Join our collective. Your unique perspective would enhance our whole. I am Prince Xander of House Vestraza, he replied, advancing steadily. Son of Queen Vestraza, heir to the Draconian Empire. And you are threatening my home. The Queen's massive head tilted, studying him. You identify with the reptilians, yet your biology is mammalian. Curious. Inefficient. Individual consciousness is limiting. Individual consciousness is what you fail to understand, Xander said, continuing his approach. It's our strength, not our weakness. With a sudden movement, he fired, not at the Queen, but at the neural node behind her. The disruption caused a momentary lapse in her concentration, enough for Kraz to fight through the pain and launch himself at the creature, his battle claws extended. The Queen's attention diverted. Xander sprinted to the neural node. The virus injector was just meters away, where Thex had dropped it. He dove, rolled, and came up with the device in hand. The Hive Queen screamed in his mind, a psychic assault of pure rage. She threw Kraz aside with incredible strength and turned toward Xander, her compound eyes gleaming with alien intelligence. Your species is doomed, she projected. Humans are too few, too weak. Draconians will never truly accept you. You belong nowhere. Xander smiled grimly. That's where you're wrong. I know exactly where I belong. He plunged the injector into the neural node. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Hive. The virus, designed to disrupt the collective consciousness, spread through the neural network like wildfire. The Queen screamed, a sound both physical and psychic, as her connection to the collective was severed. Throughout the structure, Hive warriors collapsed, their coordinated actions dissolving into chaos. The organic walls themselves began to convulse, the living ship suddenly, without central direction. We need to move, Kraz said, staggering to his feet as the neural attack ceased. This entire structure is collapsing. They fought their way back to the extraction point, carrying their wounded. The ship was breaking apart around them, massive sections of organic material sloughing away as the virus corrupted the biological systems. When they finally reached their vessel and detached from the dying Hive ship, Xander allowed himself a moment of relief. They had succeeded. The Hive Queen was neutralized, her collective consciousness fragmented. Without their coordinating intelligence, the remaining Hive forces would be manageable. The journey back to the Imperial flagship passed in a blur of exhaustion and medical attention for the wounded. When they docked, Vestraza herself was waiting in the hangar bay, protocol abandoned in her concern. Report, she demanded as Xander emerged, still in his battle-stained armor. Mission accomplished, Mother, he said formally, then allowed himself a weary smile. The Hive Queen has been neutralized. Her forces are in disarray. For a moment, the Dragon Queen's regal composure cracked. She reached out one massive clawed hand and gently touched Xander's face, a gesture of affection rarely displayed in public. You have done well, she said, her voice carrying across the hangar bay so all could hear. Prince Xander of House Vestraza has saved the Empire this day. The victory over the Hive Collective marked a turning point, not just for the Empire, but for Xander himself. The Draconian military, which had regarded the human prince with skepticism, now looked to him with respect. His unique perspective, neither fully Draconian nor typically human, had proved invaluable. In the months that followed, as the Empire pushed back the remaining Hive forces, Xander found himself increasingly involved in strategic planning. His approach, combining Draconian strength with human adaptability, changed Imperial military doctrine for the first time in centuries. But the greatest change came unexpectedly during the victory celebration on the Imperial capital world. As tradition dictated, representatives from allied species attended the ceremony. Among them, for the first time in Xander's memory, was a small delegation from the Terran Alliance. Vestraza watched her son closely as the human ambassadors entered the Great Hall. She had known this moment would come eventually, when Xander would confront his biological heritage directly. The human delegation paused momentarily when they saw him seated beside the Dragon Queen, their expressions revealing their shock at seeing one of their own kind in Draconian regalia. Xander met their gaze steadily, acutely aware of the contrast he presented. He, who had been raised among the scaled and mighty Draconians, faced humans who looked like him but were utterly alien in every other respect. The lead ambassador recovered quickly and approached the throne, bowing with careful precision. Queen Vestraza, we bring greetings from the Terran Alliance. We were surprised to see a human among your court. Not merely among my court, Vestraza corrected, her voice resonating through the hall. Prince Xander is my son and heir to the Draconian Empire. The ambassador's composure slipped again. Your son? But how? I was adopted, Xander interjected, speaking the human language perfectly, though he had never used it before. His studies had included linguistics. Queen Vestraza has raised me since infancy. The human delegation exchanged glances, clearly struggling to process this information. Prince Xander, the ambassador said finally, the Terran Alliance would welcome the opportunity to reacquaint you with your heritage. Perhaps a diplomatic exchange. My heritage is Draconian, Xander replied firmly. Though I value the opportunity to establish relations between the Empire and your people. Later, after the formal ceremonies, Xander met privately with the human delegation. Their conversation was illuminating, not because he discovered some hidden connection to humanity, but because he realized how truly draconian he had become in his values, his worldview, his sense of self. "You must have questions about Earth," said one of the human diplomats, a woman named Alara. "About human society. I have studied your species extensively," Xander replied. "But yes, I am curious about certain aspects of human culture that records cannot fully convey." They spoke for hours, the humans clearly hoping to forge a connection with this unusual young man who looked like them but thought so differently. Xander found them fascinating, their expressiveness, their informal mannerisms, their comfort with emotional display, but also alien in ways he hadn't anticipated. When he returned to his chambers, he found Vestraza waiting for him. "How was your meeting with the humans?" she asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. Xander considered the question carefully. "Educational," he said finally. "They are. Not what I expected." "In what way?" "They lack certain draconian values, the emphasis on honor, on strength, on dynastic thinking," he explained. "But they have other qualities, adaptability, creativity, emotional intelligence, that are impressive in their own right." He moved to the window, looking out at the capital city spread below, its architecture a testament to draconian power and permanence. "They invited me to visit Earth," he said quietly. Vestraza's tail twitched, the only sign of her concern. "And do you wish to go?" Xander turned to face her. This enormous-scaled being who had raised him, protected him, taught him everything he knew about power and responsibility and love. "Someday, perhaps, as an imperial envoy," he said. "But this is my home. You are my mother. The Empire is my future." The tension in Vestraza's massive form eased. "The choice has always been yours, Xander. It always will be." "I know," he said simply. "That's why I stay." 5 years later, Emperor Xander stood on the balcony of the Imperial Palace, watching as the combined fleet of the Draconian Empire and the Terran Alliance departed for joint military exercises. Below him, in the capital city, humans and Draconians moved among each other with growing comfort, traders, diplomats, scholars, even families. The transition had not been easy. When Vestraza had announced her intention to abdicate in favor of her human son, there had been resistance. A faction of traditionalists had even attempted a coup, believing a human emperor would weaken the empire. They had not reckoned with the loyalty Xander had earned among the military, nor with Vestraza's still formidable power. The rebellion had been crushed, its leaders given the choice between accepting Xander's rule or exile. Most had chosen to stay, and gradually, as Xander's policies strengthened the empire, incorporating the best aspects of human flexibility with draconian tradition, opposition had faded. Now, as the newly crowned Emperor Xander of House Vestraza, he stood at the threshold of a new era, one in which the Draconian Empire and the Terran Alliance moved from cautious allies to integrated partners. "Quite a view," said Vestraza, joining him on the balcony. Though she had stepped down from the throne, she remained his most trusted advisor. "I was just thinking about that day when the Zalarians brought me to you," Xander said. "How different everything might have been." Vestraza's amber eyes softened with memory. "You smiled at me," she said. "A tiny human infant, facing the most feared being in the galaxy, and you smiled." "I don't remember, of course," Xander said with a slight smile of his own. "I do," Vestraza replied. "It was the moment I knew you were meant to be here." Together, the human emperor and the dragon queen who had raised him watched as their combined fleet vanished in a hyperspace, a symbol of the unexpected harmony between two vastly different species, born from the most unlikely beginning. A baby offered as tribute, raised as a prince, now leading an empire into a future neither species could have imagined alone. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.